Te reo ererangi o te mānia. This episode was produced in Otatahi by Plains Media, with support from New Zealand On Air.
Kia ora and welcome to Emergence News. This is a usually 25-minute podcast which we dedicate to the emergence of the next spiritual teacher to arrive on earth. Now, according to our information, this teacher has already arrived but has not yet openly emerged. This program is a mix of the political and the spiritual. Political because our next teacher, Maitreya, will encourage us, humanity, to prioritise appropriate housing, appropriate healthcare for all, also education opportunities for all, and sufficient nutritious food for everybody, so nobody should be going hungry. Now, the fifth priority is the restoration of the ecological health of our planet. So that's why there is a political flavour to our program. It's not just spiritual. You might have noticed the gap between the rich and the poor. Back in the late 80s and early 1990s, New Zealand professor, political economist based at the London School of Economics, Professor Robert Wade. He had a theory, or he was advocating that the minimum wage should be linked to the maximum wage, meaning the top earners make more only if they drag up the wages of those below. So your management, the top brass, the CEO, then have an incentive to increase the minimum wage or the living wage, thereby getting a wage increase themselves. So that type of economic strategy that he was advocating would be effectively a step closer to the principle of sharing our resources, and that's another key philosophy of Maitreya. Sharing is the key to the creation of trust, to quote his words. John and Peter join me in the studio this morning. Good morning, gentlemen.
Morning.
Good day.
Yeah.
How are you, Nigel?
I'm well, thank you. Professor Robert Wade, have you heard of him? He's an award-winning economist.
I think I read the same article.
Yeah, look, he was actually born in Australia, but he's got New Zealand and British citizenship.
Oh, he's the perfect man. I mean, what more would you want in your life?
But that gap between the rich and the poor, would you agree it's out of control?
Yeah, it's greed. It's greed and greed.
Materialism out of control.
Greed and stupidity go hand in hand. And the thing that strikes me is how long did they think they'd get away with it? You know, I think Bernie Sanders has produced some really staggering numbers around, as you said, Nigel, the relationship between the income of the worker and the income of the CEO is
600 times.
Yeah, 3,000 times, whatever it is. It's some astronomical figure. And my observation is, how long did they think they'd get away with it for? You know, before someone went, hey, hold on, that's not fair.
But does that enter the mind of an oligarch, that it's not fair?
No, but as we've discussed
doesn't enter their considerations, does
No,
it?
but their arrogance, they've broken cover. I think oligarchy and the corporatists, which is the other group, I think that in their arrogance and their confidence, they've broken cover and now they don't care. They don't care what the public think. They don't care what a public opinion is. They're just grinding on with their agenda. And their agenda's dominance, really, to maintain their status quo.
Yes, the World Economic Forum shows its face, doesn't it?
Yeah, you know, and I think one of the things we still have in New Zealand is a group of politicians who are concerned about public opinion and polling. But if I look out over the world, there's a number of other countries where their leadership and, you know, their political leadership don't care what the public think.
It's being ignored.
It's been completely ignored. The rule of law, the rule of public opinion has been completely ignored. And that, for me, that scares me because it indicates to me that public backlash is going to be even stronger. So that when you look at some of those very well-known nations where the political elite are ignoring public opinion, are ignoring pleas for help from their constituents, I can see an awful lot of angry constituents. And what do angry people do? So, yeah, I've got real concern for some of those supposedly Western modern democratic nations. I think that we've talked about protest before, and I've talked about boycott, and I've talked about, the Gandhi model of peaceful protest. Withdraw your efforts, withdraw your money, and there's some global boycotting going on at the moment about withdrawing from certain companies and certain corporates. Don't buy their product, don't use their services,
and don't go online for certain periods of time.
Yeah.
My wife, she has cut a number of products off our shopping list, and I tell you what, it's
hurting.
It's hurting, John.
It's hurting.
It's tough.
But I think that's a powerful way for public opinion to be expressed.
Yeah, find out which companies you want to support and which ones you want to withdraw from.
Yeah. So that gentle protest, the thing that concerns me about protest, and we saw it in New Zealand with the COVID protests. A lot of that anger came through then, but it was undirected. There was no solid leadership. There was no organised protest. There was no list of demands. It was just groups of angry people yelling at each other, yelling at the government, yelling at the cops.
And then it got out of control. It became quite violent.
There was tons of anger, which I agreed with, but it wasn't intelligent, directed, structured. And I think if you want to protest, you've got to be able to enunciate the reasons why you're protesting. So it's got to be intelligent, and like everything. It's got to be intelligent.
There are big numbers out there right around the world. There is. I think you indicated on a previous episode recently that if our media covered all the protests that were going on globally, I think people would be surprised.
Oh, look, and you've just pointed out that here in New Zealand, what coverage have we had of the flotilla?
Unless you're on certain platforms online, you wouldn't know about it.
I have a bad habit of watching the 6 o'clock news, and I generally watch Channel Television News 1. I haven't seen any coverage this week of the flotilla. And how many boats? And also Spain and another country have sent warships, Italy, to protect it. And I watched the news last night sitting in clean, green, safe New Zealand. Nothing. I mean, this is monumental. The number of ships, boats that are in this flotilla, B, they're walking into the most aggressive, violent part of the planet at the moment, and C, some countries have sent warships to protect them.
To protect the protesters.
And that young goddess, Greta Thunberg, is right there in the middle of it. And it's the young people that shall save us.
On our last program here on Emergence News, we talked about Ray 1. And we briefly talked about Hercules, the perfect disciple, Peter.
That's right.
He's the guy that runs the gym at Shambhala,
Peter. You're a cheeky monkey sometimes. Hercules, and I thought, okay, his equipment, why was he such a good example of a disciple? He had 3 Ray 1s, but the other 2 rays was what interested me. His personality and his astral, his emotional rays, were both 6, Ray 6. Devotion. So he's equipped with immense power, strong will, the will of God, and devotion.
So what was his point of evolution?
2.2 at the time.
Because if you
That's 8,000 years prior to Christ.
Yeah. Okay.
So that's a long time ago.
If you had all the power of Ray 1 and all the fanaticism of Ray 6, but no point of evolution, you'd be a nutcase.
No, I know where you're going. Don't go there.
You'd be incredibly crazy. Yeah. Well, you'd be dangerous.
Delusional.
Right?
Incompetent.
He was demonstrating the royal path to become a master. In other words, he was demonstrating the initiations, the overcoming of the various fears and this sort of thing. And so that's why he was called the perfect disciple, because of what he was demonstrating, if we can see.
So he did the same thing that Jesus did in Palestine, demonstrate the initiations.
Examples of it.
Yeah.
Of each initiation.
Yeah. Wow.
Remarkable.
Yeah. And 8,000 years before Jesus.
Well, yes, 8,000 BC, yes, that's right, it was, wasn't it?
I see that some bones have been found in some dusty place somewhere, I can't remember where, that they think are 1 million years old, human bones.
Yeah.
So that whole, we've only been around a couple of thousand years, is getting slowly chipped away at. And one of the things that Benjamin Creme says that staggers me, one of the many things he says that staggers me, is humanity's been on the planet for 18.5 million years.
Yes, that's since it became enlightened. It became had the first awareness of God, like individualization. That's 18.5 million years ago, individualization. So humans were here, but in the animal form, more of an animal form. They weren't self-aware, which is the key point to becoming human.
So then we entered eventually the Lemurian age?
Yes, correct, yes. And then followed on by the Atlantean age.
Which was when
developing the emotional body.
And now we're entering another age.
We're trying to get control of the emotional vehicle now.
So that we can develop the mental.
Exactly.
And that's why everything's so damn unpleasant at times, because we're awash in this great change, trying to manage our emotions as well as move into the realm of mental focus.
That's right.
And it's making things really difficult.
And we're pretty addicted to listening to our feelings.
Yeah. That turbulence, but also, as we've discussed previously, the masters of materialism, the forces of evil on this planet, are pounding our emotional astral centres with shopping, with fear, with materialism, with extreme political and economic theories. They're really banging on that lower nature of humanity to keep us enthralled. You can't keep an ensouled individual enthralled, Peter, which is the point you made a couple of programs ago, that once you strengthen your soul contact, you become immune to large amounts of the astral. So the forces of evil, the forces of materialism do not want us to move away from the astral.
Correct.
But there is increasing numbers being incarnated now. The youth, as you indicated and hinted at earlier, that have a yearning, don't they, Peter? There's a yearning to grow. There is a yearning to develop the mental focus.
Well, that's why we've got, millions on the point of taking the first initiation. And, of course, there will be entities coming in now who have already taken that and will be developing the control of the astral, which is the second initiation.
True light bearers.
Yes. And so that's where we're at the moment. We're in this flux sort of situation.
Yeah, it's messy. It's messy.
Yes, it is messy, because the influence of the age of Pisces for the last 2,000 years, the age of individualisation, it hasn't disappeared. So that potency of that ray 6 is now waning, but it hasn't disappeared. And of course, we haven't fully entered the age of Aquarius, where the ray 7 energy will dominate.
Right.
But we're right at the cusp, aren't we, of change. So it explains, John, as you just said, why there is so much turbulence and chaos, confusion perhaps.
Yeah, and it's the new pushing through. And for the new to push through, the old has to break down. And if you've got no other ideas but what you currently know, watching those ideas crumble can be incredibly frightening. So I think fear is being stimulated by the forces of evil as well. And if I was sitting in the control room of the forces of evil, I would be pulling the fear button, right? The lever. I'd be yanking that fear lever.
Well, I see the number of people that pulled out when Netanyahu was talking at
Oh, wasn't
United
that
Nations.
stunning?
Number of people that
Just
moved
walked out.
Didn't want to hear his rubbish.
United Nations Assembly, wasn't it?
Yeah. Wasn't that phenomenal? So, there is change. There really is change. But I think, listeners, we need to be aware that the bad guys are fighting a tough rearguard action. And we can see that in the political arena. There is lies being told constantly to keep us enthralled, to keep us fearful. Immigration being one of those buttons that's getting constantly pushed because humanity has an innate fear of the other because we believe we are separate.
And that's one of the great fallacies.
And that's the great fallacy.
That we're
separate.
Yes.
And if we're separate, then it's an easy step to convince people that the other, the one that is different from you, is the problem.
Yeah.
You are listening to Emergence News, and it's great to have your company. In the studio with me are Peter and John, and we have been talking about, we started talking about Hercules, and look where we ended up, men. Fascinating, isn't it? All right, world politics. But there is the reason why there is a mix of the political and the spiritual on this program, John, is because the political situation on this planet is integral to us making a spiritual step forward.
Yes, but also it's the political process that shapes our economics. It's the political process that shapes our social structure, right? So when we talk about the spiritual and the political and their interrelatedness, politics is how we shape our relationships, inter-nation and extra and outside of nations, right? So we live in New Zealand, so our political landscape shapes our economic landscape, shapes our finance landscape, shapes how people live and how people interact in this country.
And therefore how they're educated.
Yeah. So the politics, and we've had a change of government who are tweaking the economic model, they're tweaking the education model, they're tweaking the health model, they're tweaking the environmental model. So I think that's why Maitreya and Krem talk about politics and economics, because it's the politics that is the tool that is used by leadership, whether voted in or not, that control the populace, that control the population. So economics comes under politics for me.
And I remember 25, 30 years ago when I was first taking an interest in politics, and people would say, whoever is voted in to govern our local community or at a national level, our government, we get exactly what we deserve. And that left me pondering for quite a long period of time.
Yeah.
That level of responsibility.
In fact, I read an article recently that said the difference between China and America is that Chinese leadership understands that political will is more important than commercial will. So in China, political will is preeminent, is dominant, and it shapes commercial endeavour. In America, commercial endeavour shapes political will, political ideology. And this article argued that was the reason that China would be more dominant in the short to medium term, because they understand that structure, that it's the leadership, the politicians that shape the country, not the commercial interests.
Commercial interests.
Yeah, but commercial interests have only got one goal, which is profit and increasing profit. Their one goal is the acquisition of wealth, where you could argue if you are being gentle and loving, that political will may in fact have other goals. It may have
social goals.
Yeah, the health and wellness of the population. And also a long-term vision of where the nation could be, where that corporate mindset, that merchant class, if you like to use an old term, has one goal, which is the acquisition of wealth, the continued acquisition of wealth, and ever-increasing wealth, which of course is a very narrow-minded, short-term, self-destructive goal because we live on a finite ball of dirt that provides all of our material wealth.
And that's why some countries in the West are privatising healthcare, for example.
It's
because it's profit driven,
yes,
rather than people driven.
Yeah, absolutely. Bernie Sanders has said many times, America has the most expensive and the most inefficient healthcare system. Why is that? Because at its basis is profit, and only those that can afford it can access it. Every other country in the world, worth its salt, and I don't know about every other country, but probably 95% of them, have some variation of universal healthcare, right? So they do better. And it's interesting that Americans consider universal healthcare as socialism, communism, and all sorts of other things. But none of them, they're an unhealthy population with an expensive healthcare system.
And of course, Sanders is coming from the viewpoint that healthcare for all should be a birthright.
Yeah. And also, it's the model that a lot of people don't understand, and that is many contributing a little achieves more than a few contributing a lot. That's taxation. That's a healthy nation. If we all contribute for the roading, we all contribute small amounts for the power grid, we all contribute for small amounts for social infrastructure. But that neoconservative liberal model says user pays and that only the people can afford it should access it. But you can't generate enough wealth from those few to provide rock-solid infrastructure. So countries like America, the UK and New Zealand, their infrastructure's shaky because that model's been dispersed. And it gets this awful name called socialism or capitalism. But actually, all of us contributing small amounts for everybody's goodwill is a very healthy way to live.
And there are examples of that.
Oh, this is what I find so frustrating. Our politicians only have to take their head out of the public trough and look to the north, to the Scandinavian countries, and see systems that work better. It's very frustrating sitting in a country like New Zealand that
and
could
seeing
do
our
so
health
much
and
better.
Education sectors crumbling.
Getting chewed to bits.
Yes.
And it's ruthless.
Okay, so we need to be more awake and more aware, John. What have you found in the latest Share International magazine?
Oh, gee, Nigel, I flicked the Share International magazine open and went, I can't do any of this. I really can't. I looked at page 10 in the latest Share International, and it said the importance of being aware, awake and open-minded, a compilation. And I went, I can't do any of that. This is above my pay grade. Being aware, being awake and being open-minded, it's got to be the toughest things on the planet, right? So I stalled a little bit, right? I thought, I can't go there. So I went to my old friend, the glossary of esoteric terms, and I went, what's self-realisation? Because having read some of this article, not all of it because I found it depressing, reading some of this article on page 10, I went, self-realisation, what is that? Glossary of esoteric terms, self-realisation, the process of recognising and expressing our divine nature. The masters of wisdom are all self-realised beings, having conscious control on all levels of human and superhuman planes of existence, right? So I'm not getting any of that this lifetime. But I thought about the term spiritual, a much misused, bandied around term. What does spiritual mean? Benjamin Creme has this interesting definition. The quality of any activity which drives the human being forward towards some form of development, be it physical, emotional, intuitional, or social, in advance of his or her present state.
So that's quite pragmatic, isn't it?
And it's very broad. So going to the gym could be, and I'm thinking of Hercules, going to the gym could be spiritual. Changing your diet. Cleaning up your diet could be spiritual. Cleaning up your room could be spiritual, if my daughter's out there listening.
The principle of Zen?
It could be a spiritual endeavour. Dad, I've tidied my room, you little saint. Right? So that's a very interesting and broad term. So then I went to this article, and it's on page 10, and it's got some really great headlines. Awareness, the growing interest in Eastern philosophy. We talked a couple of programs about how mainstream meditation has become in the last 10 years, 15 years, right? When I first started meditating back in 1986, I was, it was like I had leprosy. People just did not want to discuss it.
Meditation, what's that?
Yeah, you weirdo. I bet you're wearing Birkenstock sandals and eating brown rice. It was like weird. But now it's so mainstream, right? The other article here is waking up. Earth is about the halfway point, so we've got a long way to go. There's no good news there. And then it comes to open mind, which we discuss a lot. Benjamin Creme has said the rarest thing on the planet's an open mind, right? And he's so true.
Because when you think you're right, you're probably wrong.
Yes, because of glamour. And I wanted to revisit glamour when I looked at this article. So to be open-minded doesn't mean empty-minded. So there's some of those things that we could probably look at soonish.